Now today I'm going to try to use up a rainy day to swap out the discs on the FZR. I got these discs from Vlad at motoworldonline.com. You can check out his website. Gotten a lot of stuff from him lately. It's all been good. Now the discs that we're replacing have given us good service for many track day years, street years, over 10,000 miles, and the bike already has coming up on 30,000 altogether, and I think this is going to be a nice upgrade for the brakes. Now I've done all the things over the years to spinning the buttons, cleaning them, keeping the pads clean, but it's just time, and there's like anything in life, there's just time. On this bike, it's time for an upgrade. Now on the GS 1100, we've had 3 sets of rotors already. These are the EBCs, the floating EBCs. Way better than the 2 Suzuki sets that we got. The original ones were not floaters. These are floaters, way better. We already have videotaped that. That's back in the library of coming up on 1,000 videos. And of course the R1 just has a super set of brakes, really super. I wish I could just take this whole front end off and put it on the FZR sometimes. Now one of the best investments, and this was about 75 bucks that I ever made. I got the power winch from Harbor Freight, the heavy duty strap. I always keep the bike stabilized on the back axle. But this allows me to just get the front end off the ground enough that I can, well, whatever amount I want, because I'm going to have to obviously pull the front wheel and pull the calipers off. By the way, one of the last upgrades we made on the bike, we replaced the windshield. We made the carbon fiber windshield, and that, of course, that turned out to be just as good as gold, and that has shown it's stiffened up the front end because this is track day bodywork. It's very flimsy. This really was a good thing I should have done years ago. But it's time to replace the discs. Well, from this point it's pretty simple. We got to pull the calipers. I'll just do the step by step. Pull the caliper bolts, tie the calipers back, take the axle bolt out, pull the front wheel off, and then usually the bolts usually, when they're in this case probably for many years, they can be a little bit of a pain to get out, but I'm sure we'll be able to get them out. Always the best thing before you start any of these things, get the calipers up out of the way. Now we can pull the bolts, get the old rotors off, clean everything up nice. This job will go pretty smooth. A small tip I learned the hard way that makes it easier for me. I put all the spacers, all the parts, all the tools I need to do this side of the bike, leave it on that side. This side I know I have a different spacer on this side for the wheel. Of course it's not a symmetrical wheel because there's a drive for the speedometer. So by having the tools and the bolts, it just makes it a little bit easier for me. Now the next thing is going to be just unscrew the discs and clean the wheel and replace it with the new discs. Now I'm fussy about cleaning everything up once I take everything off, and then I'll hang these discs, I'll add these to my collection of about 20 discs that are worn out and seen their best service life is behind them, that's for sure. But because these are gold inside, and I think that even that'll make a nice little upgrade. Now, as can many times happen on these, especially when things are Loctited in, you wind up, and this is a great tip. This tip works every time. I've never seen this not work. These bolts, and what happens, let me take one, and of course they're old bolts, they've been in there a long time, but they tend to radius off a little bit where the Allen wrench goes in, and they don't, when they're Loctited in, you can't get the bolt broken loose. A great tip, and I used this several times before. This is, and I'll show these up close, this is again, these are from Harbor Freight. And you can see we made one, especially I made one just for, I call them the star wrenches, whatever you want to call them. But what you can do, and you would think this wouldn't work, but it works so good, it's unbelievable. You can take the next size one that doesn't fit in a hole and just hammer it in. And because the tool steel is harder than the bolt itself, it makes 2 new grooves. It actually now is going to be a little bit of a nuisance. I'm going to have to hammer that off. But that now allows you to get that last bolt out. And if you have ever come upon a bolt you can't get out, and I know Luciano had one on a Ducati that wouldn't come out. We did it a little bit different, but this is really a good trick. The tool, that whole set of the star wrenches is $10 in Harbor Freight, probably even if you don't have a coupon. And it's ironic how there's always one bolt that's frozen in. It's unbelievable. And of course we'll just replace that bolt when we put it back together. Next step is the simple green. Let everything soak for a while. Wipe this off. I just want to get as much of the grease and dirt off as I can while it's apart. And make sure there's absolutely no stones, no dirt or anything in here when we go to put the new disc on. Now, just by running these bolts on a buffing wheel for a minute or so, they'll come out looking brand new. And just 1 minute on a buffing wheel and they really, I think it makes a nice little upgrade. Again, the whole purpose of doing this is for upgrades. Now these are symmetrical rotors. The same one fits both sides. So that's not true of every one. And I read some directions, or I don't remember some directions. Some of my YouTube videos where if you're doing wave rotors, and I'm not, these because they don't have a wave, but the waves shouldn't line up. They should be offset. So because these have holes, this is kind of the old school way. These really look beautiful. The workmanship on this is just perfect. Blue Loctite on the bolts, and what I like to do is just the way you would torque the head on an engine, star pattern, opposite. Torque each one down hand tight, and then about 5 or 10 pounds more, same thing in the star pattern, and then put the final torque on with a very accurate, and it's not even a Harbor Freight torque wrench. We have a good one. We paid list price for one. It's unbelievable. Okay, the last step now is just to flip it over, put the other disc on, and then reassemble the bike backwards, just for all the steps that we did in the beginning. Kind of a straightforward thing. Hope there's a couple little tips you can use in the course of checking this out. I just had a nice coffee break. Ready to put this back together. Just a complete reverse of what we did. Loctite the bolts, and then we have that little thing we did it many times on a video, of bouncing the front end with the calipers locked and then tightening all the axle bolts. And that's almost too easy to do. This was a very nice, gave us plenty of time to do it right. I never like to do a job like this if I'm under some time constraint. And one of the final little touches I'll put on this is I'll run all of the bolts on the buffing wheel. The nut, this will just make it a little bit nicer. Every little thing I can do to clean it up, polish it, just make it a little bit easier to clean and maintain. For just a minute or two, and all these little details get taken care of. Now, a really handy tip is, of course, putting this all back together, it's always a problem. The spacer wants to fall out and everything. A little bit of wheel bearing grease on the spacer kind of holds that in place. And I found, and of course, lining up the speedometer drive with the little detent that keeps it from spinning around. But I learned another thing in the course of doing this. I found something else that I think is really worth, I didn't expect it, but it's really worthwhile. Is I've always had the issue of when I have to put the front wheel on, the bike is off the ground and I have to get my feet underneath it and raise the tire up using my feet. Well, in this case, what I did it just a little bit different. I just, instead of raising the tire, I just lowered the bike right onto the axle, right until everything lined up. And that worked out just as good as can be. I can't believe it. And I just figured, what the genius I am, I probably did it 10 times the other way. But anyway, that is having this a $75 tool saves your life. It's unbelievable. And I work alone almost all the time. Another tip, I always put a little bit of either oil or grease on the axle before I push it through, so that it doesn't come out all rusty and corroded next time you change your front tire or whatever. I'm really old school too. What I do is every time I tighten a bolt or push something through or put a caliper on or anything, I want to spin the front wheel. I don't want to see any resistance, anything that doesn't look right, something that's out of alignment. Now the brake rotors, these should be really, really nice. The new pads should seat in very, very quickly, a couple 100 miles, and we should have some really nice brakes for another 38,000 miles. All it's left to do now is just lower it down off the lift, wait for it to stop raining, and we'll hopefully in the next week or so break in those new pads. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you picked up a couple little tips. Hey, us backyard mechanics, we got to share the information. It's almost like we planned it this way, that it's just stopped raining when we put the final assembly on this. And again, I hope you enjoyed watching and picked up some tips. I say that over and over again. And now we probably have, there's something realistic here that I have to take into account. We probably have more money tied up in the front brake of this bike than what we originally paid for the bike. I'm not sure if that's exactly accurate, but it's close. Anyway, again, thanks for watching.